And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so delighted to welcome to the show today New York Times best-selling author Janelle Brown, here to give us the inside scoop on her brand new red hot book, I'll Be You. And for this exclusive pre-launch event, Janelle's here to tell us all about this book.
I am. Hi. I'm super excited to be here. This is my very first time talking about this book in public, in an interview kind of format. So it's really exciting for me to be here today. So you want me to tell about the book?
Yeah, tell us about this book.
I need to get my elevator pitch down. So this is going to be my test run. You can tell me if I do this right. Okay, so I'll Be You is the story of twin sisters who were raised in Hollywood, child actresses. They're kind of Olsen twinsy, like they had a TV show, then they shared a role as children where they both were each played the role half the time, got older, had their own TV show where they played twins, and then everything went sideways, and one sister decided she wanted out. And it's now 15 years later, and Sam, our first protagonist, is a recovering alcoholic. Her life has fallen apart. Her sister Ellie is kind of the proto homemaker in Santa Barbara. And they haven't spoken in a year when Sam gets a call from her parents saying, "You come help us take care of your sister's kid." She's checked into a spa and she hasn't come back. And Sam didn't even know her sister had a kid. So she goes home to take care of her sister, her niece, and in the process discovers that her sister has gotten into some deeply problematic group called Gen Femme, which is like a feminist self-help group. And so she has to figure out what's happened to her sister and how her sister's life has gone off the rails and what this group really is. And there are many twists and turns along the way.
Many twists and turns indeed, and I can't wait to get into every dark and delicious corner of it. But first, I just want to welcome everyone who's watching with us. We are broadcasting live to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. You know how it goes if you've been here before. Every Monday for hashtag Mystery Monday, because you know Mondays can be murder, I give you my handpicked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask Janelle about these twins. She lives in LA. Could she be speaking from personal experience? Her daughter involved in some musical theater. Is she the dreaded stage mom? We're going to get the skinny on all of this and much more. So get your questions going in the comments. And oh my gosh, the praise is just rolling in and it is red hot. So I'm going to be sharing that as well. Janelle, I'm going to kick off. So you address a lot of really timely issues in this book, as you are known for doing. So in Pretty Things, you took a scathing and insightful look at social media culture. We see the threads of that play out in I'll Be You as well. You're also talking feminist culture, women's empowerment, women's disempowerment, twin issues, sister issues, mother-daughter issues, addiction. I want to hear more about your research process into that because it is so raw. It is so visceral. Really loved how you got in there on that. So much to chat about. So let's kick off with your research process. So when you're detailing the two twins, Sam and Ellie, Sam has plummeted into addiction. Ellie seemingly living that perfect wife, mother life. What was your research process into addiction culture, into Sam's addiction?
Whenever I'm doing a book, I kind of start with characters that I imagine them and I'm trying to get into their heads and trying to figure out who they are. With this book, I knew that Sam was an addict. I knew that she was a recovering addict because I thought part of her journey was going to be like trying to go from being the unreliable sister / daughter to like discovering who she really is and kind of coming into her own. I've known a fair number of addicts over the years. Alcoholism and drug addiction is not something that my friends have been strangers to. I'd seen some of that firsthand. I do a lot of reading. I'll go to Psychology Today. I'll pick up books. Like I read a lot of books about twins and their relationship with each other. I read books about addiction and recovery. I talk to people. I talk to people who've gone through the things that I am writing about and try to get glean what I can from their personal experience. I did not talk to any cult members this time around, but I did read a lot of stuff about that and wellness culture and Nexium and so on and so forth. So.
Yes. And I want to talk about that as well, because Sam and Ellie's mom, the reluctant at first stage mom, who is I've never been to Santa Barbara, but my sense of Santa Barbara is that it's a bit woo-woo. And as a yoga teacher, I was recognizing a few caricatures of these characters. I was like, oh yes, I think I've met her 2 or 3 times. But a crystal holding, swirly dress, gypsy dress wearing, patchouli emoting, sort of wellness culture, and how you talk about how suburban moms are often sucked into that. Is that something that you're seeing in LA? Did you want to take that on? What are your thoughts about wellness?
I think there's about a half dozen crystal shops within a mile of my house. So yeah, it's everywhere. I'm fascinated. I don't know if you ever listened to the podcast. Is this is this Occult? It's called oh my gosh, Amanda Montell. Her book is called Cultish. She has a podcast about cults, and basically it's about what's a cult. Is Soul Cycle a cult? Is Goop a cult? Is like crystal culture cult? And it's like this kind of like line that we cross between self-empowerment and wellness culture and believing in something and then going too far with that belief and when it becomes dangerous. Like the idea of when something that you're trying to do to help yourself crosses the line into hurting you instead. And that was something I'm fascinated with. And I see it everywhere here. I've watched many people I know get involved in dubious stuff. I'm like, really, Scientology? You're going there? Why are you going to that? Why are you going to go take that personality test? Don't do it. And then people do it, and and it brings something to them that helps them for a while, and it makes them feel good, and it makes them feel like they're improving themselves, they're improving their lives, but then it can just go over the edge real easy. I'm not saying that everybody who's ever bought a crystal is woo-woo, has joined a cult. Certainly not. My friends would kill me if I said that, the ones that give me crystals for my birthday.
Will I get my salt lamp here, Janelle? I'm a yoga teacher. I have 2 going, which I'm not going to ward this negative conversation. I'm just kidding. No, I do have my pink Himalayan salt crystal just blazing here next to me, cleansing the air. But it's so true. And that's one thing that you address. One of the many things you address in the culture is Sam coming out of addiction, dutifully going to her AA meetings, starts to wonder if, getting well isn't a bit of a cult, if AA isn't a bit of a cult, and seeing her sister sucked into Gen Femme, which at first seems to be, empowering women to step into their, into what they want, taking ownership, taking possession, of the things that they want instead of waiting for permission or living through other people. Seems like a good thing at first, until it goes too far. So the question, I thought that was a really interesting question because it can get obsessive and go from something well into not well very quickly.
Yeah.
Jen, welcome to the conversation, saying hello. Melissa's saying hello from Australia. Welcome to the conversation, Melissa, saying good day. Sarah and Janelle joining us from down under. Melissa, welcome. Always a pleasure to have you, ma'am. We are talking cults. We are talking wellness. We are talking all the good things today. Another issue that you address is the culture of moms and moms and daughters. So, Sam feeling like her mom, wasn't maybe really there for them in the way that she needed her to be. We're coming up on Mother's Day here. I think a lot of us are thinking about mother-daughter stuff. What were you trying to really get to in this book on that front?
Every book I've ever written has mother-daughter stuff in it. Maybe the exception of my second book. It's something I cannot stop plumbing. I think it's like the richest relationship to mine. Sisters obviously are really profound in this book as well. Friendships are husband-wife. But for me, the mother-daughter relationship always seems to be like so ripe because it's what defines you as a person. Is your mother helps shape your path. And it's the most, pivotal first relationship you have, and is also then can be the most painful and difficult if you have a toxic relationship with your mother or a difficult relationship with mother, or you don't connect in some way or understand each other in some way. My last book was like there's a very unhealthy mother-daughter relationship in that one. This
Yes.
one wanted to explore more like a relationship where it's about a mother who doesn't realize she's doing the wrong thing, thinks she's doing the right thing, but just can't handle seeing the bad things. Like there's a blindness, and I see
willful blindness.
Willful blindness.
Yeah.
And I see this with many mothers and daughters, mothers and sons as well. It's like, you don't want to see the problem, because if you see the problem and you acknowledge the problem, then the problem exists. So it's easier to kind of pretend you don't see it, to not talk about it, to sweep it under the rug and hope it goes away on its own. And of course that just causes, everything to get much worse. So that was kind of the relationship that I was exploring with this, was the willful blindness.
Yes. And in your last book, the mother-daughter, taking that mother-daughter toxicity to a whole new, previously unimagined level there, Janelle Brown, with such deftness and also really hooking us good. Now, the praise has just been pouring in. Laura Dave, the New York Times bestselling author of The Last Thing He Told Me, raving, "You won't be able to put this novel down, and you won't want to." So, Janelle, you are a New York Times bestselling author several times over. What have you learned in your career in terms of how do you craft an unputdownable book? What do you think the secret is?
I did not go and get an MFA. I don't read craft books. I'm not someone who could like recite, line by line the, bird by bird book or anything like that. But what I do is read a lot. I read constantly, and I read and I reread and I reread. And what I ultimately do is I write for myself. I write for what I like to read, and how, when I'm writing a book, I usually intuitively feel when I'm starting to slow down as a reader and getting bored. And that's when I know that I need something to happen. And so I don't like books where too much happens too fast. I like books that are like slow burns and they pick up pace and you're like, oh my God, like I want to know what happens, but that there's like character development and you're really getting to like sink your teeth into characters and relationships and themes and ideas, but it keeps the story moving. And then there's a couple of moments when you're like, oh my God, and then you have to find out what happens next. So that's what I try to write to. And I have a hard time defining how I do that. I really do. But apparently I do it. So there you go.
So when you're writing and then rereading your drafts, do you, as a reader, as someone who loves to read and reads a lot, do you sort of note, oh, I'm drifting here, so I better amp up the tension on page 15? Or is that something that just comes intuitively to you on that first round?
It's more like a feeling that I have, like as I'm kind of pushing through, I feel like this is going to sound really woo-woo, but I can feel internally
the
momentum of a book. I feel it in my own heart as I'm writing, where I'm like if I'm starting to feel a little bored or starting to feel like it's a little slow for me as a writer, that I know it's going to be slow for a reader. And so for me, that's when I'm like, I know that something needs to happen, and I'm like waiting for the characters to tell me where they're at emotionally. And that's when I start thinking like, okay, what does this character need right now? What would completely like set this character off in a new direction, and therefore reset the momentum of the book. And that's when
Ooh, that's fascinating. And I'm here for the woo-woo. I mean, not too woo, but just woo enough, the right level of woo. Because I think when you're in that creative flow as a creative being, if you are willing to be open to the rhythms of writing and the rhythms of reading, you can intuitively feel it, because we've all had that feeling as reader where you kind of lose interest and you just sort of, drift. You're not as sucked in as you could be. So of course we're all feeling that, whether or not we're noticing that we feel it as something else entirely. So I like that you've tuned into that.
It's like being in a conversation, and when you feel a conversation starting to wane, and you're like, this conversation is just boring. We're starting to repeat ourselves. We're starting to like, we've mined this material. Like, it's time to change topics. Let's like see where else we can go with this. Like, that's the intuitive feeling as a writer that I have.
Oh, that's so interesting. So do you notice that in the context of a conversation, do you find yourself drifting toward the cocktail table when the conversation is getting repetitive?
Sometimes, yeah, yeah. I think I sometimes can have a short attention span. Not always, but I like getting into a deep conversation. But I also sometimes feel like I'm like, oh, okay, we've done that conversation now.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
I do notice that in conversations. I notice that in reading, and I also notice that in writing. So I really I appreciate that you're bringing that to the page as you craft as well. Chris Bajalian, also another favorite writer of mine, chiming in with a rave review. He says, I'm going to pop it up right here. Janelle Brown is a terrific storyteller and a stylist. I'll Be You is one of those books you will devour. It has a hot mess of a narrator, actually two hot messes, twins, both of whom you will root for, even as you were screaming at them to get a grip. Also, the novel has more twists and turns than the canyon roads that snake up and around Los Angeles. Chris Bajalian saying it as only Chris Bajalian can. So and he certainly knows his way around a hot mess narrator or two. So high praise from Chris there. Now, let's talk about, what do you think he meant as a stylist, a storyteller and a stylist? I'm intrigued by his word. Do you think you're a stylist? Are you styling this book?
I think I have a voice. I think that's maybe the one way to put it. I certainly, I'm 5 books in now, and my first 2 books were more kind of domestic dramas in the Jonathan Franzen vein, and then the last 3 have been what my editor and I have loosely dubbed literary suspense. They're not quite thrillers, but they're kind of mysteries, but they've got a lot going on. They're like also book club friendly. So I get talked to a lot of book clubs, and people are always like, well, what's your genre? I'm like, I don't know. But I think so. But I do think that you can pick up a Janelle Brown book and know what it is, because there's I think I have a strong kind of dark, funny voice. Maybe that's what he means. But I like books that jump off the page. I like, characters that jump off the page and scenarios that are modern and sharp and kind of dark and funny. And so I think maybe that's what he means. I don't know. I have to get him. We should get him on here.
Brilliant on this call. Yeah. So one of the things that I really loved about Pretty Things, that I actually would be highlighting and underlining and then texting to friends or posting snippets of it, is the sharp, stark, and funny way that you have of looking at social media culture, because that has become such a pivotal point of all of our lives, and yet it is so ridiculous, and it is so it's so curated that it's hard to get your bearings sometime, or remember that other people's, perfection reel, the best of reel, is not their reality. What's your relationship with social media like?
I mean, I have a complicated one. I have been on every social media platform known to man, with a couple exceptions. I don't do TikTok. I can't go there. I'm not on Snapchat. I'm too old for that. But I've done Twitter. I've done Facebook. I've done all the way back to MySpace and Friendster. For me, I find that Instagram is really my medium. I like seeing other people's lives. I like the positive feeling that you get from Bookstagram culture, I think is a very specific corner of Instagram. I feel like the influencers and the fashion world and the, lifestyle influencers, that I think is toxic and scary and weird, and so that I do not love, and I try and stay away from it. But I do get the warm fuzzies from book readers and bookstagrammers, and communicating with readers, and seeing friending other authors that I've met and seeing what they're doing. But that said, I'm very aware that even as I'm participating in this and I'm communicating with people and I'm posting stuff, it is a very curated version of my life. I don't post pictures of my children, for example, because my 12-year-old daughter would kill me, and she begs me not to do that. I have a private account for that. I don't, I try and be honest and funny, but of course I'm putting up pictures of myself when I've made my hair look good, and pictures I'm promoting my books, and so that's a very specific snapshot. So
Yeah.
I have real mixed feelings about it. I love it, I hate it, I'm addicted to it, I use it, I can't live without it, but I also wish I could. So
I like how you capture that, because it's something that I wrestle with, and I think a lot of us wrestle with as well. And I like how you really delved into that in Pretty Things, but we see that again snaking through your interest, your fascination with it, and the duality of your complicated relationship with it snaking in here, where, for instance, Sam is making latte art at a cafe. She's newly out of rehab, and she notices that her mom follows the cafe and likes the photos, but only the ones with her in it. And so it's just these little tiny moments where I'm like, because we all have that feeling of taking a tiny peek to see who's liking what and who's following what. Let's get over some questions from others now. Melissa would like to know, what gave you the idea for this book? Yeah, it's a wild ride. Take us back to the inception.
It's always really hard for me to pinpoint exactly where a book idea comes from, because usually what it is there's like, I've been thinking about something for a while, for years, maybe. Like, I've always been interested in twins, and I'll be interested in something else, and eventually one day I'll think, God, what if these two ideas met somewhere, and what if this happened? And then I'll start writing it, and new ideas will come to me as I'm writing. So with this book, twins was something I've been interested in a long time, and particularly twins in Los Angeles, and how twins share roles, like the Olsen twins thing, where they were shared a role in Full House, and eventually they got their own roles, and they're in their sitcoms. So, and my daughter is in musical theater in LA, and I watched as a pair of very cute twins got snatched out of her musical theater group to go share a role in a Marvel movie. So, you see it happening. So that was fascinating to me. And then wellness culture, that was really the other thing I wanted to write about, and cults and being obsessed with NXIVM. So really it was the kind of nexus of those two ideas coming together, and one day me having this kind of aha moment, where the voice of Sam, the character that kind of I opened the book with, and who's the dominant twin in terms of narrative voice, her voice popped into my head one day, and that's when the rest of it started coming together for me. As I hear the voice of the character, I'm like, okay, now the book is starting to unveil itself to me, and I get ideas from them.
I have also always been fascinated with twin culture. I always wished that I was a twin until I was 9. I convinced myself I had a twin, but she had just been kidnapped, but someday we'd be reunited, because twins are the coolest. It's so fascinating to.
And there's so many more of them now because of, there's thanks to fertility, treatments. We have a lot more twins than we ever did. So
yeah. Exactly. And it's so fascinating. And I think when you're looking in on twins, you always think, oh, did you ever switch places? And of course you died. You died.
There.
Yeah, exactly. I remember, I'm old enough to remember Haley Mills and The Parent Trap, and, and the twins. I think that was sort of my first twin switching place movie moment of my childhood. And so I thought, oh, if I had a twin, we could switch places. And so seeing how this starts for them at a very young age on set, and then how it becomes
very dark places. Yes.
Oh my God. Right. Because how taking that sort of idea, that seed, and then germinating it and expanding it into the craziest, most unimaginable thing ever, is trademark Janelle Brown. I feel like.
It was like when I started, there's a kind of prologue where the very first section of the book is about the two twins looking into the mirror, and one of them saying, "I'll be you, you be me." And so for me, the whole book kind of blew up from that moment. Like, then what happens? What do they do next? What happens next? Like, how dark can this go from here? That's what to do. How dark can I make this book get?
Well, when Janelle Brown is at the helm, it can get pretty dark, apparently. Monica Faye saying, hey, lady, I'm so excited. Yay. Monica, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And she would like to know, Janelle, did you stress bake during the writing process?
Monica follows me on Instagram, so she knows. Yes.
What was your drug of choice? Your baking?
I wrote most of this book during the pandemic. And so during the pandemic, I mean, I've always been really into baking, but I got really into baking during the pandemic because what else was there to do? I'm stuck at home with my kids. My son loves to bake. I got into baking bread. I made homemade sourdough bread. Like that's all we did. But sourdough bread twice a week. I would make bread. I was going. I baked cakes. I baked cookies. But I do stress bake. And then unfortunately, I eat the stress baked goods, and then that's no bueno.
What do you like about baking?
I like two things about it. There's a precision to baking that I think the Virgo in me really identifies with, is this kind of like you have to really know what you're doing. You have to really like know like how do you make a pie crust? You really need to get the butter crumbled into the flour and pieces that are this big, and if they're too big it'll run, that's the kind of precision that I love. Also, baking makes people happy. Like nothing makes people happy like a cookie or a brownie or a piece of pie. Yes. I love that. That's the headline.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because everything you just described is why I don't like baking. I love to cook. I mean, I'm an Italian woman. I am compelled to feed you, and I love to be a savory cook. But the precision of baking, it's like, oops, did I already add the baking soda or did I forget? Or did I add a teaspoon or a tablespoon and then I end up with something that either didn't rise or it's like hitting the roof of the oven.
Not to chill the batter, and oops, my sugar cookies are just like giant blobs of goo.
Yes, that happened to me. Because you get all the way to the end of the recipe and it's like, now chill it for 24 hours and bake the cookies tomorrow. And it's like, oh, it'll probably be fine if I just do it now.
It's not fine. It's not going to be fun.
It won't. And so you have to be so precise and committed to precision and care. And you can't just throw a bunch of stuff in and keep adjusting.
You could say that's a metaphor for writing too. I mean, I feel like, sorry, just to bring it back. See how I did that right there?
I like it.
It is. I mean, I feel the same way about writing. Like, I like to be precise, but I also like to improvise. So maybe that's not the best metaphor. So.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so as a precise baker and writer, Monica's saying you do use that precision in your writing. She's adding, I think the careful details you put into baking and results is also such an interesting look into how you add details into your characters and thriller twists. So let's talk about that. Do you measure, do you plot it all out carefully, precisely, accurately, or are you flavoring as you go?
Both. I start with a loose outline, very loose. Like I know the important turning points of what I have in my mind. Like I know the general arc of the characters, where they're going to begin, where they're going to end emotionally. Because for me, that's the most important part. And like, what is their journey going to be? Then I have the kind of big, where I feel like are the big plot points and the big turns in the book that I have imagined in my head. And then I sit down and start writing. And obviously, often what happens is that as the characters come to life, the story starts to change. I realize that what I'd imagined this character doing doesn't feel natural to the character as they've come alive in the pages I've written. So things do start to change. So in that way, like I'm kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of writer, that I do write, I do allow room for things to grow. But then the precision part of me, I think then really as things change, I go back and I really work to make sure and revise and change the path of the course of the book to make sure that it lands in this new place that I've decided it should land in terms of storyline. So I do get, by the end of the book, I do have very kind of long, thoughtful like outlines and character arc, timelines, things like that. So that's the precision part. But the precision part often comes later. The recipe, to use the metaphor.
So I did not see this ending coming. I'll say it. You could have knocked me over with a feather. So was that, you said you knew where these twins were going to start out emotionally, you knew where they're going to end up. Did you know the whole time, or did Sam and Ellie surprise you and take you on a flavorful journey?
I knew that the kind of, I'm not going to give anything away, but I know what you're talking about. I knew that turn, not immediately when I started writing the book, but pretty soon thereafter. I was like, where is this going? And what is this, what is kind of the big turns of this book. And so I figured that out pretty early on.
Mm.
I was writing towards that. That not every book was like that. I mean, Pretty Things, the some of the big twists that I also don't want to give away, but the one involving her mom, for example.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I did not know that until about halfway through the book. And that's another example of, I felt like something needs to happen. Then something pivotal is going to happen with her mom. I don't know what it is. It needs to happen here. What is the thing? And I realized it. And I was like, oh my God, yes, of course, it makes total sense. Then I had to go back and rewrite the whole book so that I landed there. Once I had this epiphany that this is like what the character should be doing in this moment, and it turns the whole book upside down, I then had to go back and rewrite to get there. So that's how that happens with me sometimes.
Yeah, I did not see that coming with the mom. Monica saying she was still so upset about the mom twist. The mom #mom twist. Let's get that trending. That was a big shocker. I mean, there were a few mom twists I didn't see coming, but that final one was painful. Oh my God.
For me, like what I feel like what I'm always writing towards in my books is having things that surprise you and you're like, oh my God, but also make complete sense with character. You're like, oh,
okay, yeah.
Like that's what I don't ever want to be writing something where you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. There's a twist in here just for the sake of a twist, but why would this character do this at this moment? I like to have like the moment where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this person just did this thing. But of course, it's obvious that this person did this thing. Like now that I think about it, yes.
Right, because that's who she is, not who we want her to be, which I think is almost the core of why some relationships are so hard, because we see other people as who we wish they were instead of who they actually are. And the realizing of who they are instead of who we want them to be is that painful. There's the rub.
Yes, exactly. That's a theme in so many of my books. It really is.
Exactly. And let me get this one. Here it is. Emma Straub saying, absolutely delicious. Janelle Brown is a surgeon of the complex relationships between women. So there we have it. It's honing in on that, and that incisive moment of these relationships. I absolutely loved that she included that was one of her favorite parts of it. So congratulations on that amazing review. Also getting a starred review from PW. Let me pull that one up as well. Oh my gosh, they're just coming. There's so many rave reviews. Publishers Weekly raving that a bestseller Brown infuses this twist-packed mystery with an intense story of creating one's identity, rife with deep family trauma and a low-key creepy depiction of the dark side of twin intimacy. The perfectly paced, emotional reveals of the twins' shared history pull the reader toward fierce investment in Ellie's safety and the sisters' reconnection. I also liked how you switched narrators, but you consider Sam the main voice of the book.
Well, I think she takes up about 70% of the pages, like maybe 65, 70. And, I found with this and with Pretty Things, like even though I'm going back and forth between two characters, there's one character who tends to dominate a little bit. And Sam has the stronger voice. And in fact, when I first started working on this book, I was imagining it was all going to be from Sam's point of view. And it wasn't until I got into it, I was like, no, of course, I need to write Ellie too. We need to understand how Ellie gets into what she does. And for me, that I'm fascinated, like, why do people, make bad decisions? And both Ellie and Sam make bad decisions. And I wanted, I couldn't only pay attention to one person's bad decision and not get into the others.
Right. And I should have been
in my heart, I'm a therapist, and I want to understand why people. And this weekend I was talking at LA Times Festival of Books. Like, what I do is I talk about why I want to know why people make bad decisions that are sometimes illegal.
Illegal. What did you figure out?
What did I figure out? I mean, I could write many books about it. In fact, I have. But that's what I delve into. Like, that's what I'm interested in, and I want to understand what makes people tick.
Yeah. And I should have been expecting a dual narrative because this is a Janelle Brown book after all, but I wasn't. I was like, oh, this is a Sam book. I just was reading along in my Sam, POV. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? Nellum and Ellie. And of course, sisters see things differently and to see them harken back to, because you also have dual timelines between the now and their childhood moments, and to see them both perceive things differently because, of course, siblings perceive things differently, and mothers and daughters perceive things differently. We're all in the same room. We all saw the same thing, or did we? Because our recollections and our experience of them is so, so different.
Totally objective. It's totally subjective. Yes.
Y'all, the book is out tomorrow. This book isn't even out yet. Janelle is coming on tonight, the night before her pub date, to give us the inside scoop. It's out tomorrow. Pre-order it tonight. Here's the link. Order it from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore, Murder by the Book. Grab it, click it right now, add it to your cart, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will put it in the mail to you tomorrow, fresh off the presses, so you can get into this twin drama, double the trouble and double the fun. So grab your copy. Grab your copy now. I've also put all of the amazing reviews. Kirk is also raving a delicious work of intrigue and suspense. You won't want to stop reading until you find out what's happened. That is absolutely true. I stayed up until 4:15 in the morning Friday night.
Really? Oh my God, I love it. I love it. It makes me so happy. I mean, I'm sorry that you didn't sleep, but I'm not. I love, yeah.
Well, one time I was at a yoga conference, and I think that someone actually tried to invite me into their cult. I can't remember. It was like the Path or something, but it sounded pretty culty. And she was like, "Oh, you should come to a meeting." And I was like, "This is the moment I've been training for. Like, I'm being recruited. I've got to, And I said very firmly, "I will not be coming to your meeting." But I thought, is this it? Is it happening? And apparently, these things do. And seeing her sister sucked in is a fascinating and deeply addicting story. See what I did there?
Yeah, you did.
Y'all, thank you. We are out of time. I see we're actually over our time. Janelle, thank you so much for coming on and giving us this inside scoop. Y'all, thank you for joining us, for watching, for your questions. Grab that link, order the book, and then hop into the Facebook group, Mystery and Thriller Mavens, and let us know where you think that's where the real tea is spilled. So let us know what you're thinking. Are you Team Ellie? Are you Team Sam? Let us know in the comments when you read the book. Janelle, congratulations. Happy pub day.
It's been so much fun. I love being on the talk with you.
Yay. All right, everybody. I'll be back at the top of the hour with New York Times bestselling Jennifer McMahon live from Vermont. Stay tuned.
Bye.